Greetings, everybody. Over the past few weeks, I've been having a number of conversations with people, both privately and publicly, around things like council tax, statutory liabilities, and what does or doesn't actually apply to you. And I've also been sent after content, posts, messages, videos, most of it saying the same thing, that the law doesn't apply to you unless you consent, that everything is based on contract, and that you can simply step outside the system completely. So I want to take some time to address this properly, not from opinion, not from theory, but from real experience and real consequences. If you've been told that the law doesn't apply to you unless you consent or that you can step outside the system completely, you might be making a mistake that only shows up when it's too late. Because I didn't just read about this, I lived it. Let's be clear, I understand the argument. The idea that there's a living man, a straw man, a natural person, and a legal person. That statute only applies to a legal construct. And that without consent or contract, it doesn't reach you. Now, I've studied it. I've tested it. This isn't me dismissing something I don't understand. And I also understand why people are drawn to it. When something feels unfair or like it doesn't make sense, the natural reaction is to look for a way out. But there's a difference between finding a solution and avoiding responsibility. Now, when I first started this well over 7 years ago, I went down that route, the sovereign route, the truth movement. I did the talks, I did the festivals. The idea that this was the way forward sounded amazing to me. And I followed it. I'm going to be honest with you, it caused me no world of problems. It was ridiculous. I ended up with CCJs, I had debts coming out of my ear holes, I had situations that didn't go away just because I believed they shouldn't apply. And that's the part people don't talk about. They talk about the theory, but not the consequences. Now, I stood up and took responsibility for my actions. I took responsibility for all of it, and I dealt with it properly, and I've cleared every single one of them. But that experience is exactly why I speak the way I do now. Because about 3 years ago, something clicked in me. I realised something simple but very important. You don't get to opt out of cause and effect. Belief doesn't override consequence. And the idea that you completely step outside the system, it doesn't work, not in the real world. And I also realised something else, that I've been living under natural law my whole life anyway, because I'm not a slave, never have been a slave. I am a private man, but I exist in a structured world. Now, everything I do is structured. I don't operate on belief. I operate on what works. The way I look at it is simple. You deal with reality at the level it's operating on. If something comes in as a claim or demand, I deal with it in the private first. I create a record. I respond properly. I stay structured. But the moment something moves into the statutory or enforcement realm, guess what? And that's where it exists, so that's where I deal with it. Private when it's private, public when it's public. No ideology, just what actually works. But here's the reality most people will avoid. You cannot fully step outside the system because most people still have bank accounts, passports, driving licenses, access to roads, access to services. And when things go wrong for them, they'll still turn to the courts to help them. So the question is not whether you're in or out, it's whether what you're doing actually stands up where it matters. Now, I've seen posts saying things like, you need a contract for council tax. They must prove agency. There must be a beneficial interest, otherwise it's fraud. But let's bring that back to reality. Contract law applies to private agreements. Council tax is not a private agreement. It's a statutory liability. You'll hear that they need to prove an agency relationship. They don't. Because liability doesn't come from agency, it comes from legislation. If those arguments were true, nobody would pay tax, nobody could be prosecuted, nothing would be enforceable. But that's not what happens. Courts don't operate on online theories. They operate on legislation. So the question isn't what you believe, it's what the system recognises. What I see now every week is people who followed these ideas coming into the community in trouble. And now they're dealing with liability orders, enforcement, vehicles taken from their driveways, homes at risk, or even dealing with multiple house repossessions at the moment. And these aren't bad people. They're people who genuinely thought that what they were doing was the right thing. That's why this matters. Because this is where responsibility comes in. Because if you tell someone something doesn't apply to them and it doesn't hold up, they don't just lose an argument, they lose money, they lose stability. Sometimes they lose their home. And at that point, belief doesn't matter, only consequence. So I'm not here to argue with anyone, and I'm not here to tell you what to believe. But I am here to make sure that if you're dealing with real situations, you're working from something that actually stands up when it matters. If you're in a situation right now, or you're trying to understand how to deal with something properly, don't try to figure it out all alone. Come and join us inside the I Am community. It's a private space where people come together to get clarity, stay grounded, and actually work through what they're dealing with properly. No hype, no promises or shortcuts, just structure, support, and real application. Because there's a big difference between what sounds right and what actually holds up in the real world. Because when things get real, you need something that actually works. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.